Well, to talk a bit more about the humanitarian crisis in Gaza, I'm very pleased to be joined live now by Tess Ingram. She's a spokesperson for UNICEF, which is the UN's children's agency. She joins us live from Amman in Jordan. Good afternoon to you. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Can you paint a picture for us, first of all, about what daily life looks like for children in Gaza right now, particularly in the north?
For children in Gaza at the moment, the situation is incredibly dire. We're talking about water being down to a trickle, food being almost impossible to find, shelter is not enough. It's tarpaulins and blankets amidst cold and rain. And this is true in Rafah, where I was last month, where lots of families are continuing to struggle. But as we just heard, that is where most of the aid is first meeting people. As you travel further north up the Gaza Strip, the situation becomes more and more desperate as people struggle to continue to find food and water and aren't being reached by the humanitarian aid that they need to survive.
And I appreciate the UNICEF is a humanitarian body, you're not a political organisation, but can you shed any light for us on why so little aid is getting into Gaza right now? Whose responsibility is this? Where's the failing?
So it's incredibly challenging to get aid into the Gaza Strip because through those crossing points at the southern end of the Strip, there are screening processes that are complex and long, and they really slow down the entry of aid. But then once aid gets into the Gaza Strip, we have an added challenge of trying to distribute it to vulnerable people in the middle of a war zone where there's unexploded ordnances, damaged roads, continuous interruptions in telecommunications and no assurance for our safety as humanitarian staff. So as UNICEF, along with other humanitarian aid agencies, we've been calling for weeks now for all parties to the conflict to try and provide better guarantees to our workers on the ground so that we can do our job and reach the children and their families that need it.
And I ask you that question about responsibility because Israeli officials, as I'm sure you know, have pointed the finger directly at the United Nations. I want to quote you this from Brett Miller, who's Israel's deputy ambassador at the United Nations. This week, he said, 508 trucks have been waiting to cross into Gaza. He says they have Israeli approval to cross. And he said, and I quote, "Where is the UN and its agencies? How can Israel be held responsible for a situation that is clearly the fault of the United Nations?" What's your response to that?
Our response is that we're doing absolutely everything that we can in a horrific situation where we are putting our lives at risk and we're not able to get the guarantees that we need to operate safely. More than 160 United Nations colleagues have been killed in the last 4 months, which is a number unlike whatever we've seen before. And I can tell you that I know from speaking to colleagues on the ground and being there myself about a month ago that we are moving aid. We have trucks going to the Rafah crossing and to Kerem Shalom, and we're loading supplies as fast as we can. There are, of course, challenges on both sides, and people are desperate for that aid, which sometimes slows our ability to collect it, but it is moving out of those crossings.
And can I just ask you, given you were yourself in Gaza a month ago or so, what struck you the most? What shocked you when it came to the situation, particularly for children there?
The thing that shocked me the most is that there are so many children there. Half of the population of Gaza is children. And so when you walk the streets of Rafah, probably even more now than I was there a month ago, because people continue to flood into this area, you look around and it's children living in such desperate conditions. It's cold and it's wet. I saw many children without shoes. And I spoke to mothers who bemoaned the fact that they weren't able to get basic things for their children to eat. And this is in Rafah, where we know that aid is getting in to some degree. So the situation in the north, we know that it's far, far worse. And these evidence and these findings that we're getting from the Gaza Strip should be shocking the world, and yet we continue to have inaction on doing anything to try and get on top of this crisis that's getting worse by the day.
Tess Ingram, a spokesperson for UNICEF, talking to us there live from Amman. Thanks very much indeed.